A funny thing happened. I was sitting here and thinking that something seemed to miss, and I realized that I recorded a couple of videos for Tuesday and forgot to record the Q&A. So my apologies to those of you that sent your questions and were expecting them to be answered yesterday. Oopsie daisies. Well, I'm catching up nonetheless. Apologize also for the wet look. Just got done showering. Some of you may know, but a lot of you may not. The Schleg Daddy is back to working out, and what I mean by working out is running. A lot of you probably don't know that back in my high school days, I was a runner. I was decent. I mean, I was a former conference champ and all conference performer many, many moons ago, obviously. But I've gotten back into running. Not that you necessarily care, but I am wondering if any of you guys out there that actually watch me actually run at all or anything like that. I was just kind of curious, but you might see some videos in the future of me from races that I do in the future, some workouts that I do in the future. So any of you care, just so you know, if you don't, oh well, just watch them anyways because I'm in them and I'm a badass. There you go. So anyways, let's get to these questions. I left out the fantasy football questions so that way I could kind of make this a shorter and sweet Q&A, just sticking to the sports questions because frankly I had some good sports questions come in. Matt 2 wants to know, who do you hate more, Dwight Howard or Jay Cutler? Dwight Howard is not so much a hate for me. It's just kind of a, I saw it coming when he was coming out of high school. I felt like I saw right through him. I thought he was full of shit, frankly. And I think he's proven to be. I mean, apparently he's decided the best way to spread the word of God is to knock up multiple women out of wedlock and become more of the typical professional athlete and in particular NBA player. I don't know if I would say that I flat out hate Dwight Howard because he's never played for one of my teams. He's never really done much to one of my teams. I dislike him. I think he's incredibly overrated. I think he is the perfect validation of what I talk about, that if he's supposed to be the best center in the NBA today, how sad does that make the NBA? And I stand by those statements. But, yeah, obviously I got to hate Jay Cutler a lot more. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going on his 6th year in Chicago. This is a guy that can't beat Green Bay. The Bears were in the NFC Championship game in 2010 season, and he goes out with that serious knee injury, even though later on that night he could be walking up and down steps at a restaurant. I mean, this is a guy that represents so many things that to me is what is wrong with the Chicago Bears organization and why they're no real threat to win a championship now or any time, frankly, into the future. When I see Jay Cutler, it's like in a lot of ways a taller version of Rex Grossman, a better version, but still in a lot of ways very similar, especially with how some of the Chicago fans still, after all this time, knowing what crappy and mediocre quarterback play looks like, still clinging to that hope that somehow magically a 31-year-old Jay Cutler is going to figure it out and he's going to change compared to who he has been in his previous 8 seasons in the National Football League. And ding dong, dumb dick, it's not going to fucking happen. And then an organization that needs to totally rebuild, an organization that needs a real franchise quarterback, decides that they're going to give this guy more money. They're going to pay Jay Cutler Aaron Rodgers money to not beat Aaron Rodgers. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I have much more hatred for Jay Cutler than I do Dwight Howard. It's not even close. Keys 10. After these first 4 games, is Brian Hoyer legit? I guess it would depend on how you would define legit. Like, is he a legit stud? No. Is he a guy that can be a starter in the National Football League? Yes, I think he has established that. Is he just an average starter or a good starter or a very good starter? I think the jury's still kind of out on that, even though I lean towards more of an average starter. I think the Browns are right at this point for continuing to start him and not playing Manziel because, to me, whereas I thought with the Vikings, it was completely ridiculous that they started off the season with Castle over Bridgewater. Similarly with the Jaguars with Henne over Bortles. And you look at this, and I'm saying Hoyer, you could argue at this point in time, does give the Browns a better chance to win than Johnny Manziel. Henceforth, Brian Hoyer needs to be the starting quarterback, which is not something that was there in Minnesota or Jacksonville, in my opinion, and frankly, even in Oakland. Derek Carr, if they win a game this year, is much more likely to lead them to that victory than a noodle-arm Matt Schaub was going to be. So it all depends on the situation, but in this case, I think the Browns need to ride with Hoyer as long as they are in any type of realistic playoff contention until they are mathematically eliminated. That could come in week 10. That could come in week 12. That could come all the way in week 17. They might not be ever mathematically eliminated. They could potentially be a wild card team in the AFC, and that is true. So for the Browns right now, he's legit enough to get the job done. They're at 2-2. He needs to be a little more consistent, especially early on in games. So Pete from Oss asks, with all the alleged rape and scam charity news with AP, could you see the NFL banning him for life, and would you agree? I don't know what you're talking about with the rape part. Are you talking about the orgy part? I'm not really sure. The scam charity news, yeah, that's bad. Along with the child abuse stuff, that's bad. Is that lifetime ban bad, though? No. Does that tarnish AP forever? Probably. Will there still be a team that would want to bring him in? Oh, yes. But I don't know if banning him for life would be the right thing to do. If they decided that they wanted to suspend him for, let's say, all of the 2015 season, I would not raise an incredible stink about that at this point. You talk about both the child abuse stuff and then the scam charity news and so on and so forth. Especially because it seems like Adrian Peterson is legitimately convinced for some reason that he did nothing wrong. That beating a 4-year-old kid with a tree branch to the point where they're scarred and they bleed and have marks on their body is okay. No, that's not okay. Like I said, I'm not totally against whipping and I'm not totally against spanking, but I think far too many parents do it far too often with far too little effect, far too little understanding of what they're doing and why and the importance of it towards their children. And again, this is a 4-year-old. You are a grown fucking man. You are a professional football player. If you need to use a weapon of any kind, and a switch could definitely be considered a weapon, if you need to use a weapon to instill discipline in your kid, then you have fucking problems anyways. And that brings in a greater question of what type of parent are you really? I mean, that's pathetic. So yeah, at this point, if they sat there and said, AP, you're suspended for all of 2015, not going to bitch about it at all. I am Justin Dunbar. What should the Milwaukee Bucks do to become legit contenders in the NBA? Number one, fire Jason Kidd immediately. You don't want that cancer anywhere around your organization. You really didn't want him long-term around your organization as a player, and you most certainly don't want him around your organization as a head coach. Ask the Nets how that works out for him. The Bucks will find out. That's the first key. Get rid of Jason Kidd. I know you just hired him, but you could just as easily fire him. Get rid of his ass. What do you got there? You got Jabari Parker, Atakatempo, whatever the hell his name is. It's hard because you look at some of these teams and the way the NBA and their salary structure is set up, it's really hard to get big-name free agents to come to these smaller markets. There's just not a lot of incentive to do it, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but the Bucks are going to have to draft well. They're going to have to make, since they're not really going to be able to bring in big-name free agents, they might have to trade for a big-name guy or guys that could fit what they're doing. The Bucks are going to have to be that type of organization, that type of team that wins similar like the Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Ben Wallace Pistons did under Larry Brown in the mid-2000s, where it's about system and it's about pieces and their fit. They're going to have to become either a team that's about athleticism or about defense and discipline. And never say never, but it's going to take time. Lex Express, your thoughts on the A's, Angels, and Tigers all going winless in the postseason? It just goes to show you, especially in the case of the Angels and the Tigers, you could spend all the money in the fucking world, but if you don't spend the money on the right people in the right places for the right reasons, it's all going to mean hella beans. The Yankees are a perfect example of that in today's modern Major League Baseball. This is a team with a upper echelon payroll every single year. And consistently, they either get bounced early from the playoffs or, like this season, they don't fucking make it at all. And when it comes to the A's, to me, Billy Beane should be fired. He made the move. He made the aggressive move. I kind of advocated for it. I understood he had to go for broke, but he went for broke and he went broke, and now he should be fired. That simple. You traded Cespedes for Lester, who's going to be a rental, and you didn't even win a playoff game. No, you must go. Enough is enough. As far as the Angels, I think it's time for Solskjaer to go, frankly. In terms of the Tigers, you could have all the aces in the world, you could have all the power in your lineup in the world, but if you don't have a bullpen, it doesn't mean a hell of beans. 2013 HT Outlaws. Why do you hate Frank Gore? I asked because in one video I felt a sense of hate, such as you didn't pick Gore for Martin. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to be as honest with you as possible. This question is fucking stupid. Where in the bluest of blue fucks would you equate me saying not dropping, or me saying that you shouldn't drop Doug Martin, who you probably spent a second or third round pick in fantasy football for, to pick up a Frank Gore, equates to me hating fucking Frank Gore. This is why sometimes it's so hard to have civil, intelligent conversations with football fans, because of dumb fucking questions like this. Seriously, where in the fuck did you get that from? It's like a while back somebody asked a question about Big Ben. Where in the fuck did you sense that I hated Big Ben? Did I come out and say that? If you were asking me why do I hate Dwight Howard so much or Jay Cutler so much, like Matt Meffay 2 kind of did, there's reasons to believe that. I've given you reasons to believe that. Like legitimately. I've created an aura and I've said things that would lead you to be inclined to believe those things may or may not be true. But Frank Gore, where in the fuck did you come up with that one? That's just stupid. Now, I don't care if it gets you mad or not. That's a stupid-ass question. If you're going to ask me why do I like something or why do I hate something, make sure it's not a stupid question. This 2013 HT Outlaws is a stupid question. For the record, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Frank Gore. In fact, as I believe I've said, if not, I will make it perfectly clear so that way there is no misunderstanding, dumbass, is that Frank Gore is the key to the success of the San Francisco 49ers. When they pound the rock, when they are physical, and if Frank Gore establishes that identity, it benefits Colin Kaepernick, the rest of that offense, and that defense. That somewhat overrated defense, that somewhat overrated quarterback, and those somewhat overrated offensive weapons. And frankly, sometimes I think that's somewhat overrated offensive line. The one player to me that isn't overrated in any way, shape, or form, and in fact is perhaps a little bit underrated in terms of his importance and significance to the team, both by fans, the sports media, and fucking idiots like Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff of the San Francisco 49ers, is Frank fucking Gore. Is it any surprise that as they go to Frank Gore more, they find ways to win fucking football games? Does that sound like to you I hate Frank Gore? Come on, man. Be smarter than that. That's just stupid. And again, if I answer a question like that pertaining to fantasy football, you have to remove as many biases as you possibly can, which makes your question even more ridiculous. I don't care if I've got, somebody that's a Chicago Bear and that's my team. If I cut that player because I think there's somebody better out there, or if I trade him to make my team better, then that's what the fuck I'm going to do. It's not about personal allegiances or loyalties or fandom. It's about winning fantasy football games. In matchups, in championships. That's simple. Man God 45. Why are people already giving up on Derek Carr? He's got nothing to work with. I don't disagree that he has nothing to work with. I'm assuming what you're talking about is that a lot of people are projecting the Raiders to take a quarterback number 1 overall in 2015 if they finish with the worst record in the league. Well, I will say this. I agree with that. I'm an advocate for that. Because you took Derek Carr in the second round. More likely than not, if you finish with the worst record in the league, that would be a quarterback picked by a now fired general manager, because you can't imagine they would still be stupid enough to keep Reggie McKenzie. So why would a new regime want to be tied to another failed regime's second-round quarterback? And if that quarterback was so good and so much of a real franchise guy, then why did your team finish with the worst record in the league? Similar to the situation as I've referenced before with the Carolina Panthers in 2010. They took Clausen in the second round. He stunk up the joint. Established he wasn't the guy. New regime wants a new quarterback. They go with Cam Newton. And there you go. It's that simple. all this other talk of to take Leonard Williams and Cedric Obey or this or that is fucking stupid talk. If there is a quarterback that is worth the number 1 overall pick and you're the Oakland Raiders and you have that number 1 overall pick, then you take the fucking guy. In the NFL, you either are a team with a quarterback or without. And if you're a team without a quarterback, it sure as hell is a lot harder to be a championship contending team than if you do. See my Chicago Bears as a perfect example. It's not so much about giving up on Derek Carr, it's just facing facts. Are you going to tie your future as a head coach or a general manager to Derek Carr from a previous regime if that team, under his leadership and his quarterback play in part, was responsible for them having the worst record in the league? I don't fucking think so. K-Hizzy13 closes out this Q&A by asking, why isn't Mettnberger getting any playoff time? He was one of my top-rated quarterbacks in this draft. What do you think? Well, to be honest, just because he was one of your top-rated quarterbacks, just like he was one of mine, doesn't really fucking mean two hella beans. In terms of Mettnberger, here was a guy coming off a knee injury. You have to keep that in mind. Here's a guy that, lacks mobility big time. I mean, he has a tiny bit of ability to move his feet, but not too much. At some point in time, I think he'll get some playing time. He might even start this week for all we know. Because Charlie Whitehurst isn't going to do anything. And at this point in time, you would hope that Whisenhunt will be smart enough to understand that that Whitehurst might be a veteran, but that doesn't mean he's the best option for you. He sucks. So at least if Mettnberger is going to suck in place of Jake Locker, at least you're going with the younger guy, and you're hoping he'll get better and figure it out and learn from his suck. But yeah, I mean, Mettnberger might get some playing time at some point in time, but then if he goes out there and he wins a couple of games, Titans fans are going to be, getting crazy and getting stupid about, well, this guy's the franchise and this guy's this. This guy was a 6th-round pick. I mean, until he really establishes that he can truly be the guy, you have to assume that he's not the guy and that the guy isn't in the organization currently. Thanks to you guys that submitted your questions for this Q&A. I appreciate it. I'll be back again Thursday with another Q&A episode, other content on here. For those of you like 2013 HT Outlaws, you know how I am. You know how I say stuff sometimes. Don't take it too personal, but make sure if you ask me a question like that it makes sense. And if you're one that gets easily pissed off because this is one of your favorite players or one of your favorite teams, then grow up. Too fucking bad. We're talking about fantasy football here. Come on.